We'll now call to order the February 1st, 2023 Reno City Planning Commission. Commissioner Armstrong, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Heather, can you please do a roll call?
J.D. Draculich.
Here.
Harris Armstrong.
Here.
Peter Gower.
Here.
Mark Johnson.
Here.
Arthur Munoz is absent. Sylvia Villanueva. Here. Alex Felto.
Here.
We do have a quorum.
Great, thank you. We'll now go to agenda item number 3, which is public comment. We'll open public comment. This item is for either public comment on any action item or for any general public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
Let me just say this into the record real quick. It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there is disruptive behavior, and you will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. We did receive a voicemail that was general in nature and not specific to any item on this agenda. Due to vulgar language, this message will not be played during the meeting. A redacted transcription was emailed to the commission and is part of the record. And I do not have any requests to speak forms at this time.
I'll bring one up. I don't know if the case number is on. Do you want to speak during this item? Pardon? Do you want to speak during this public comment or public comment during case?
Thank you. Okay, seeing no public comment on this item, we'll close public comment, move on to agenda item number 4, which is approval of the minutes. Item 4.1 is approval of the Reno City Planning Commission December 8th, 2022 meeting.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Villanueva, I have to abstain.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson, I'll move to approve the minutes from December 8th.
Commissioner Gower, second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Agenda item 4.1, approval of the Reno City Planning Commission December 21, 2022 minutes. 4.2, agenda item 4.2.
Commissioner Johnson, I'll move to approve the meeting minutes from December 21st.
Commissioner Gower, second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. We'll now go to agenda item number 5, which are public hearings. We'll open up 5.1, which is case number LDC 23-00037, Caramella Ranch Tentative Map Extension. Do we have a presentation? Oh, that's right. Jeff, are you on the Zoom?
I am, and if you guys move me over to panelists, I'll start sharing my screen. So just give me 1 second.
We're doing it right now, Jeff.
Excellent. Let me just get my screen up real quick. All right, can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right. Well, good evening, Chair Velto, and good evening, members of the Planning Commission. Sorry for not being able to be with you in person tonight. I'm in Las Vegas at a conference right now, so I'll be sure to stop by and say hello sometime soon. So the project before you tonight is a request to extend the approval on our existing approved tentative map for Caramella Ranch for 2 years. For those unfamiliar with the site, it's located between Demonte Ranch High School and Brown Elementary School, adjacent to the Rhyolite Aggregate Pit. The last remaining village that has yet to be final mapped is Regency Unit 5, here highlighted in red. So just to kind of go over some of the history here, this project was originally approved with a tentative map back in March of 2017. It was originally for 935 lots. And the first final map was recorded in December of 2017. That was for this tiny little piece here up in the north east corner. Then eventually we made our way through with the second map, the third map, the fourth map throughout 2017 and 2018. We came back in 2019 and amended the tentative map to add 20 additional lots up in the northeast corner, right where that first map was done. We called that the cottages. And right after that, we recorded this second Regency Village. It was our sixth map. And then we came back in and mapped this Cottages Village. And then we mapped Regency Village 3, Regency Village 4, and all that's left right now at this point is Regency 5. And we have submitted this application. The final map's been under review. And, you know, as you can see, we recorded Regency 4 within 4 months of Regency 3. And this was done at the time when sales were booming. Final maps typically take about 10 to 12 months from the submittal point to recordation. And then construction for a village this size typically takes about 9 months. And so it takes quite a bit of forecasting, and you know, we base everything on forecasting on current data and deciding whether we want to proceed with a village. And with that said, we ended up mapping Village 4 and submitting our Regency 5 plans based on the 2020 and 2021 demands. Well, all of you guys know 2020, 2021, early 2022, we had very, very high demand here in the Reno area. But then the Federal Reserve started to increase interest rates. In fact, if you follow the news, you'll know that the Fed has increased interest rates at the fastest rate in the last 35 years. And so this has had a direct impact on our mortgage rates and the affordability of homes. It's also significantly slowed our sales. And so now we have enough lots with the Regency 3 villages, the Regency 4 villages to accommodate our current demand. And so while we were going through the processing of the Regency 5 village, calculating fees and understanding the construction costs, we realized, wow, this can be about $1 million in fees, and then we have to begin construction once we record this map per our subdivision improvement agreements. And we're like, okay, well, do we really spend this amount of money and pay all of our interest carry costs when we really don't need these lots? So what we're really looking to do right now is extend our tentative map approval so we can spend a little bit more time focusing on phasing and aligning our improvements closer to when we need those lots. And so we're going through and understanding how to back into that timeline. And so essentially that's what our project proposal is tonight. We're asking for a 2-year extension. This is allowed under state law. It allows us time to finish our design, record smaller phases of construction. So that's what we're looking at now. And it also allows us to kind of focus on a few of the permits that are already issued on this remaining piece, which is retaining walls, our entries. If you haven't driven through this site, you know that Toll Brothers builds very large, elaborate entries, which takes some time to try to coordinate. At this time, we're not planning any changes to the conditions of approval or anything like that, just asking for a time extension as allowed under state law. And just as a piece of additional information for the actual status of this site right now, we've graded the site. We've installed approximately 30% of the utilities as part of some offsite improvements for surrounding phases. And we're also working on the construction of walls and the main entry throughout 2023. And so we have a significant amount of money invested in this project, and we want to be able to see it to its completion. We just need a little bit more time to better align our construction phasing with our current demands. So I know, Planning Commission likes to look at these findings. So these are the two findings under state law. So essentially the applicant agrees to comply with all requirements of this title and all conditions of approval. Absolutely. We're not proposing to change any of our conditions of approval. And we definitely agree to the second one, which is to pay all applicable fees. So just want to say that's about it. It's a pretty simple request. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll be able to be available for any questions if you have any.
Great, thank you so much. Leah, do we have a presentation?
Yes, we do. And good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, Leah Brock, Assistant Planner with Development Services, City of Reno. This evening, I am presenting the application for the Caramella Ranch tentative map extension. The applicant, Jeff, just did a pretty good job explaining everything, so I'll be fairly brief here. The proposed site, as you can see on the map, is south of Del Monte Ranch High and north of Brown Elementary. It is approximately 24.36 acres. Again, today's request is for a tentative map extension. This would be for a 2-year time extension for the previously approved tentative map for 955 single-family residential lots, of which 106 lots remain to be final mapped. The last entitlement issued was approved by the Planning Commission on May 1st of 2019. Per NRS, each successive final map must be presented within 2 years of the prior recorded map unless that is extended by the Planning Commission, which is the request we're here for today. Based on NRS, the Planning Commission may grant an extension of not more than 2 years for the presentation of any final map after the 2-year period for presenting a successive final map has expired. Reno Municipal Code does not have any specific findings for granting this time extension. NRS specifies no requirements other than those imposed on each of the final maps, unless the requirements are directly attributable to a change in applicable laws. Staff has reviewed the original conditions of approval and no additions or adjustments are necessary. That concludes my presentation. The recommended motion is on the board and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll come back to the commission now for disclosures. We'll start with Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Johnson, no disclosures?
Commissioner Villanueva visited the site.
Commissioner Draculich, I am familiar with the site.
Commissioner Armstrong, I have no disclosures.
Commissioner Gower, no disclosures.
Commissioner Velto, I am familiar with the site. We'll now open up public comment on this item. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
I did not receive any correspondence for this item, and I don't have any requests to speak forms.
Would anyone in the public like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, come back to the commission for questions or discussion.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I have a question for, I guess I'll ask it for Jeff. There was some information in staff report and just looking at a little explanation of potentially breaking this into 2 phases. I'm not sure that necessarily has any bearing on this, but one, I wasn't sure because the document that we had indicated both phases were phase 2. So I wasn't sure which one was phase 1. And if so, if it was broken into phases, do we have all of the required infrastructure in place to make sure that it can be completed, as a whole when it's broken into a phased project?
Yeah. Leah, I don't know if you could put the map back up again because I don't happen to have a copy in front of me, but the red would be the first phase. Commissioner Johnson, we have to be able to provide access through the site, and that's one of the access points. Based on that outline, it allows for adequate water looping for the Truckee Meadows Water Authority. And then it also aligns with some of the existing infrastructure tie-ins that exist in that area. So yes, all of those services would be able to be served that way. And if they're not, then they won't be able to approve that final map. So we have to be able to show that they can stand independently.
Okay. Thank you.
We've already by the engineering team too.
Okay, and that made sense in terms of what would go first for access. So thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Mr. Chair. No further questions.
Thank you. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I'll just follow that up with a motion.
Please.
Based upon, in case of LDC 23-00037, the Caramella Ranch tentative map extension, based upon compliance with NRS 278.360, I move to approve a 2-year time extension on the Caramella Ranch Estates Phase 5 tentative map, subject to original conditions of approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Armstrong, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thanks so much, Jeff. Good luck.
Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you. We'll now go to agenda item number 5.2, case number LDC 23-00031, vintage at Redfield Major Deviation. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Good evening. My name is Dane Hilliard from Green Street Development. Okay, thank you. Local Reno developers. We're the largest developer of affordable housing in northern Nevada. We've done about 4,000 affordable housing units in the last 25 years here. So this project is a senior 100% affordable project. We tied up the site about 2 years ago because of the zoning and density allowed us to proceed without having to go through a zone change or anything like that. We didn't know, but when the new zone ordinance kicked in, it triggered a setback that we weren't aware of. So we've been in plan check in the planning department. Let us know that because we're in full permits right now. And so what we're dealing with here is a great site for senior affordable. It's our favorite site of all the sites we have. Totally walkable to shopping, Walmart, grocery, pharmacy. There's a park a half a block away, Manzanita Park. A lot of our residents do not afford cars, can't afford cars. So walkable is critical to these types of projects. And this location, to me and to our whole team, is fantastic. You can see the location. You probably all know where that is. Here's a picture of the site. Redfield Parkway, Baker Lane. You can see to the left, the issue that triggered this step back at the top floor was single-family homes on the opposite side of Baker Lane. They're separated quite a bit distance-wise, plus walls, trees, and then we'll show you our amenities on our site to help protect against it. One thing that came up at the NAB was one of the neighbors in the area was concerned about our seniors crossing here to go to the Redfield Shopping Center. And so we're proposing to put in the flashing pedestrian signs so our residents have, it's much safer, obviously. Apparently, the speed limit's not that much, but apparently people don't follow it here. One of the things that came up with staff with planning was they requested a shadow study. So this larger picture on the bottom there is the shortest day of the year. I can't remember the date. I think it's December 15th or something at like 10 a.m. And their concern was that we were not casting a shadow on the single family. And you can see by the study, we're not. We're back in the street. So that was a big concern of theirs, and we meet that. The top right area, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see the building, the 5-story building stacked up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the top right. The lower line is what is allowed by code because the setback decreases the higher you go. So again, this is new in the new ordinance. We weren't aware of it. So what it means here is that we would lose that 5th story on the Baker Street side only because of the step back. That step back is not required on the other sides because it's already multifamily. Effectively, this is the Baker Lane side elevation where I drew my fancy red X's. We basically just lose that top floor in that area. We would lose approximately 20 units out of 223. The rest of the building would maintain the 5-story because we don't have those setbacks on the other sides. What it would mean, again, we're in plan check. We're almost permit ready. We're planning to break ground in April. This would obviously delay the project substantially. We'd have to redraw the plans, structural, the whole process, and start over basically. So it would potentially push the project out at least 6 months, a delay. And we all know that we need this housing as quickly as we can. So here's our landscape plan. And what we've done is, once we were made aware of this, we increased the size and quantity dramatically on the Baker Lane Street side to help buffer our building from the single family. The site plan, these are gated communities, all fobbed. Again, a lot of the seniors are very elderly. And we try to keep all of our amenity spaces, you can see, inside the courtyard area, so they're very protected. We do community gardens, outdoor area, barbecues, etc. Just to give you a taste of our projects, provide a lot of amenities. The seniors are predominantly retired, so we like to give them a lot of amenities on site. We do game rooms, fitness, there's a gathering room, movie theater. There's a big area with a kitchen for public, not public, but they do all kinds of stuff, bingo, and then they do potlucks and all that kind of fun stuff. The units themselves are all designed for handicap. They're all grab bars, they're all walk-in showers. The units are completely amenitized, washer and dryers in the units, full kitchens. And we include all utilities, so they pay one check a month. And our rents are about 50% less than what a market rate rent would be. Here's some of our other communities. Let's give you an idea of who lives there. Again, our average age is typically in the mid-70s. We do have some centenarians. Is that what you call them? Centenarians, I think. Anyway, that's what we do. And we would be, again, 20 units would go away. All of our projects are full with wait lists. So it just means 20 seniors would not have a place to live. Any questions?
Thank you. Will might have questions in a bit,
Okay.
But I appreciate the presentation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Leah, do we have a presentation from you tonight?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Chairman. For the record, Leah Brock, Assistant Planner. The second application is for a major deviation for the Vintage at Redfield. Here you can see the site is a 2.646 acre site. This is located just west of South Virginia, and the convention center is off to the right side there. It is on the corner of Baker Lane and Redfield Parkway. The request is to allow for an increase in the required 2-to-1 building height setback ratio by 50%, which would result in a 3-to-1 building height setback ratio. And I know that seems a little bit confusing, so I'm going to do my best to explain what that building height setback ratio really means in this specific case. Key issues related to this request are overall site design and compatibility with surrounding development, specifically that single family to the west. Approval of this major deviation will allow for a taller building closer to that single family residential zoning district across the street, and that's really the basis of what this is going to allow. The proposed 5-story, 223-unit development will be an affordable senior full-service independent living community at or below 60% of the area median income. Here you can see the graphic on the screen. This is the graphic that the applicant was trying to show, but it was kind of small there. Reno Municipal Code requires that any yard that is adjacent to a residentially zoned property have a step back of 1 foot for every 2 feet in building height. So what we're saying here is that, I think I get the mouse to work, is that the further the setback, the higher the building is allowed to be before it has to step back. So we're really just talking about this area right here. If this application for the major deviation is not approved, what they're gonna lose is essentially that 8 feet right there, fronting that 5th story. If the deviation is approved, they'll be allowed to have the fifth story as the applicant showed in their graphics. Regarding compatibility with the surrounding uses, the mixed-use urban zoning district pretty much surrounds this property on every side except for the single family to the west. To the north and to the east, we have multifamily apartment complexes. To the south is Sam's Club, and to the west is that single family residential that we're discussing today. Here's some photos of Baker Lane. That top photo there, you're looking south down Baker Lane at Sam's Club there in the distance, and that bottom photo, you're looking north up Baker Lane toward that multifamily complex. But what I do want to point out here is that Baker Lane is a 50-foot right-of-way, so we already have a buffer here. That step back would be required even if this was adjacent and that road wouldn't be there. So we do have an additional buffer of Baker Lane in this particular case. Additionally, when that subdivision across the way was built, they put in this 6-foot masonry wall and all of these trees. So we have mature trees, a 6-foot and a 6-foot masonry wall in existence. Furthermore, all of the houses, this is to their back. They front the internal streets in that subdivision. So it's not like anybody would be walking out their front door and staring at the 5-story building. On the board are the major deviation findings for your review. Staff does recommend approval subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. I do want to mention that as of yesterday, we had one letter of opposition to this project. Their main concern was the height of the building, and that resident is located in the subdivision we just pointed out. That concludes my presentation. The recommended motion is on the board, and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll come back to the commission for disclosures. We'll start with Commissioner Gower.
Thank you. Received and read emails and visited the site.
Commissioner Armstrong, I received and read emails.
Commissioner Draculich read and received emails and visited the site.
Commissioner Villanueva read emails. I am familiar with the site.
Commissioner Johnson received and read emails and visited the site.
Commissioner Velto received and read emails and am familiar with the site. We'll now go to public comment and open up public comment. I have one form in opposition from a Sandra Piccolio. Would you like to speak on this item?
I don't really want to, but I will.
And I believe I mispronounced your name, so.
Sandra Piccolo.
Piccolo, okay.
And I am in parcel 24-372-08. I am on the west side of this project they're proposing. I do have concerns, quite a few of them. Obviously, we've been living there since 2001. We've had an empty field behind us. We do have a lot of foot traffic behind us on Baker Lane because a lot of the apartment buildings do walk over, and there's a lot of trash. There's a lot of things that are left, a lot of things that are thrown over our fence that we're dealing with right now. I do have a concern about the 223 units. I understand that you say there's not many cars, but of that, I'm trying to figure out there are going to be quite a few cars. There's going to be a lot of traffic going in and out of there with the people visiting. It's going to be their family members are going to be visiting them. Baker Lane is a very small street. It's very busy as it is now. It's going to get even busier. And also the concern of the pedestrians walking back and forth. I'm concerned about my view that I'm going to be losing. I have a view of the beautiful mountains in the west, right, or the east right now. I get to see the sun come up. I get to see the moon come up. I get to see those beautiful mountains. My daughter passed away a year ago, and I look up at those mountains and I watch the moon come up and I pray for her and I think about her, and I won't have that view anymore. I'm going to have a building to stare at after all these years. She was only 37 years old when she passed. I'm concerned about the privacy. We have people now that will be looking down into our backyard. They will be looking into my kitchen window when I'm cooking dinner. They'll be looking into my master bedroom. I'm concerned about the traffic. I already stated that. I'm concerned about the snow melting on Baker Lane. When you have a high building like that, and the sun, I understand, is to the south a little bit, but you do have the snow on Baker Lane, that's gonna obscure the melting of the snow and the ice on that street. I'm concerned about my property value after all this time of not having anything back there. I'm concerned, he did mention something about the 4th floor and the 5th floor not being approved, but they're still trying to get that approved for the 5th floor and move the building back a little bit, or is that what my understanding is? I also have a question as to where the entrance will be. I didn't get to see that. Is the entrance to this going to be on Baker Lane, or is it going to be on Redfield Parkway, and will there only be one entrance to this complex? I'm concerned about the time frame for the completion of this progress that they have going on to see, to decide whether I need to move or not after being there that long. I don't want a 5-story building behind my house. The age of the seniors, thank you for addressing that. They're going to be about 70 years old, but they're still going to get out. They're still going to walk. They're still going to have family visiting them, and it's going to make, it's going to be a lot busier on that street, and it's already busy as it is now. That's 223 units. That's a lot of people. I'm wondering also, I didn't get to see, is it a single person in your unit? One person, not a couple?
It's mostly studios. It's all.
Mostly studios? Okay, that was another question I had. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any other requests to speak forms?
We did receive correspondence for this item that was distributed to the commission before the meeting. I did not get any other requests to speak forms, and there are no voicemails.
Thank you. Would anyone else in the public like to speak on this item? Would anyone on Zoom like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment, come back to the commission for questions or discussion. Commissioner Draculich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question for Leah, I guess. Probably the best route. So first looking at it, obviously we have a major deviation. I get the end there. The ratio changes, and I guess I would be more uncomfortable if those neighbors backed right up against it, but we have that buffer with Baker Lane. Is that where the city kind of stood? Is that something that was kind of the turning point for approving this?
That's exactly the turning point. There's nothing in the step back code that specifies whether the single family residential has to be exactly abutting. But when you look at our definition of adjacent, it includes even the roadway. So yeah, that's basically where the city sits, is that this building is located over 70 feet from the nearest of those residential homes there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leah, would you mind putting up that image that you had of the step back and the elevation view?
Yes.
Thank you. So you mentioned that we're really talking about that triangle portion there. Would the design of the buildings be compatible with that 5th story if that 5th story was essentially set back further into the building?
Yes. If they were meeting the step back requirements and that 5th story was set back at that far edge of the triangle there, then they wouldn't require a major deviation. In the mixed use urban zoning district, there is no height limit. So they can essentially go as high as they want and as many stories. So what we're talking about here is only the step back of that 5th story.
Do you, and maybe I'll ask the applicant that question, why, thank you for answering that question. I'll direct this at him so you don't have to answer it for him. Thank you. So why not just pull the building in 8 feet? That 5th story, I should say.
It's rather complicated because it seems like it would be an easy solution, but we've gotten funding for this project from the Homies Nevada program. City of Reno has awarded funding for bond capacity. The Home Consortium has awarded us our federal home funds. So there's timelines involved to produce the affordable housing to be able to keep the financing in place. This would be, we have to redesign that inside side of the building effectively, structural and all that. And again, we were in plan check, so this was news to us recently. And we were anticipating an April 1 start. So this came about at the end. Everything else is done. So it would just require a redo of that 5th floor. We would obviously have to step back to the right side of that triangle. I don't know if we still can maintain that many units because you're losing, I don't know, 10 feet or something, I think, about 10 feet. So the units, we have a hallway and then units on the other side facing the courtyard. So we would delay ourselves quite a bit.
Okay, so you essentially had the choice of having to go through that redesign process, go through this process, or just lose that 5th story.
Yeah,
which
and the
wasn't really an
financing again
option.
has deadlines associated with for tax credits. So it would be risking some of that in the delay timeframe. It's at least a 6-month delay, I think.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate the answer on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I do have other questions, but I can pause there.
I was just going to, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, just piggyback on that if you don't mind, sir. Does the financing, did you have to have a certain amount of units? Is that part of the deal at all, or could
Yes.
you lose? Okay.
To get the financing, you're submitting applications and they look at everything. What's your rent? How many units are you providing? What are your amenities? They look at all those things. You basically get points for them. So we would lose some number of units without redesigning it. It would be 20 if we took that whole top left side off. Maybe we could squeeze 10 in there sideways or something. But we may have to go back and potentially lose some of the financing.
Okay.
So
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for letting me jump in there.
Please.
Thank you. Leah, this question's for you. So I'm looking at the packet, I'm looking at so it's our job today to review a major deviation, right?
That is correct.
So one of the comments we heard during the public comment section is traffic and people, safety concerns. Is that, I mean, that's kind of past us, right? Those decisions have already been made that this is gonna get built even if we don't approve this deviation. It's just gonna be a matter of whether or not they get the deviation or not. Is that right?
You are correct, yes.
Okay, so our purview tonight is just deviation or no deviation, not whether or not this is gonna be built.
Exactly. So again, this is within the mixed-use urban zoning district, which allows for this sort of use. It allows for this many units. It allows for this height. This is only a question of deviation. But I do want to point out that traffic and some of those other concerns are looked at through the permitting process, which, as he stated, they're in plan review right now. So things like traffic, those are all being addressed. They're just not being addressed by this body.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Gower, did you have more questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Leah, I just wanted to reconfirm what you had stated before in terms of the building height and how the city looks at building height on a parcel like this relative to the adjacent uses. So you said that the building height could potentially be taller than 5 stories?
That is correct. There is no height limit in the mixed-use urban zoning district.
And the city looked at that compatibility during the zoning code update and developed kind of the rules around it to guide development on this site.
Exactly. So anytime you have a structure being adjacent to a residential zoning district, you have to meet these step back requirements. But again, this is where we get a little off, is the definition of adjacency in Reno Municipal Code. Because adjacency could be right up against it, or it could be across a right-of-way. So in this particular case, we're across that right-of-way, but it's still considered adjacent, which is why these step-back requirements are required. I do want to point out, too, that in the mixed-use urban zoning district, it's basically allowed, height limit is not limited, but anything over 85 feet does require a site plan review, just to point that out.
Thank you. And last question is how, so if this hadn't come to us because of this request, what would have been the noticing requirement for the adjacent properties?
None.
None. And why is that? It's just not part of the requirement. And I guess I'm wondering if it should be.
It just doesn't trigger any requirements for any kind of review other than just the building review.
Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Chair, I'm ready to make a motion.
Please do.
Commissioner Villanueva,
Can we go into discussion, please?
oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I guess this is probably the second one of these we've had in a couple of months where we're looking at a major deviation, and the reason we're looking at it as being acceptable from staff standpoint is because it's on the opposite side of a road. And I appreciated Leah's comments to that effect, but that's not necessarily, I mean, to Commissioner Gower's point, it was looked at when there was mixed-use zoning placed in next to single-family zoning with the understanding that there were conditions in place to alleviate this, one of which being the 2-to-1 setback. So yes, it's true, they have unlimited height, but our code has safeguards in place to minimize that impact between the two. And it's, I guess to the code, it's invisible as to whether it's immediately adjacent or it's across the road. So I guess I have some concerns in terms of, the approach that we're sort of taking, that it seems to be, hey, we've got this great comment in code where we're trying to minimize the height effect on single family. But if you're on the other side of a road, we don't really care about that. And I find that troubling. I mean, regardless of, the first was a school, now we've got senior housing. It's like all of the buttons that, we want to push and the projects we want to push seem to be almost just, oh, you're on the other side of a street, it's okay. And I guess I have a problem with that. I don't necessarily have a problem with this project, although I will say that I'm a little disappointed that we've had a code out for a year now, and we're finding projects going in that, you were just made aware of it when it went in. The code, Title 18, has been in place for over a year now. So this should not be a surprise. It should not get to this point where it has to be there. And I almost feel like, the way the presentation was brought to us, it was almost like, hey, all these things you guys want, so just approve the deviation. It was troubling to me that because this is what we want, because of all these financing, I don't have a single finding here that says I can approve a major deviation because that's what the funding of the project is wrapped up in. That's not a finding that I have to make. The finding that I have to make is, are we granting some, privilege inconsistent with the code? I have to make a finding that we're not being materially detrimental to public health, safety, or welfare, or that we're significantly impacting nearby property. Those are the things that I have to be looking at. So while I appreciate the project, I like the project, and ultimately I'm probably in favor of the project, I think the way that it was presented to us tonight was not in keeping with the way that we should be looking at major deviations. So with that said, I wanted to get that out there, that we seem to be going down a slippery slope of having a code requirement for adjacency and setback standards that we are essentially waiving if it's on the opposite side of a street. And I think we either need to fix that in code so that it's not a major deviation every time and we save applicants this trouble, or we become a little bit more specific as to why exactly that code requirement is there. Because, again, if we're at, an 80-foot tall building before there's any other discretionary review, I think the code, should be representative of that and not change based on whether it's right on the property line or on the other side of a road. So I guess we can put that also down under Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Villanueva, thank you so much. Those were great comments. I'm glad you shared those, something to consider. So based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the major deviation subject to conditions listed in the staff report for case number LDC 2300031.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Drackich, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you and good luck. We'll go to agenda item 5.3, case number LDC 23-00034, Rotor Investments of Nevada Self-Storage. Do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Well, thank you for having me tonight, and I appreciate the work that Carter Williams has done with working through the process, and if he's still here, I think he is. Oh, there he is. Okay. I'd like to introduce tonight to all of you the plans that we've been making for converting the once Rayleigh's grocery store, which was closed in 2009 and then subsequently became Food Source, and then subsequent to that became Sierra Foods. And upon the closing of that store, we just didn't have any options for retail. But several months ago, we were approached by StoreQuest. They prefer shopping center locations, and in this particular demographics, they had a feasibility study that was done that showed a significant unmet demand for their product, which is climate-controlled storage, and that they're proposing for here. So I've been working with them and finding out a lot about what they do. Primarily, this is storage that is for kind of lifestyle needs, storing your kayaks, storing your skis, storing your golf clubs close by to where you live. And there is literally no vacancy, none available. And the feasibility study showed that we'd be making, probably delivering at about 25% of the need for the community there, our immediate surrounding community, by doing this project. On the other hand, if we were to factor in the new apartments that are now being now under construction and just about ready at some point here soon to open, that will add a significant number of residences in the immediate 1 mile area, which is kind of exactly what StoreQuest fits that need for with climate-controlled storage. And they do create a very retail storefront. In fact, I'll have a picture of that in just a sec. I just wanted to give a bit of an overview that their approach is to be really a first-class operation, so there'll be no changes to the shopping center. We would be providing a tenant improvement package for the tenant, and then the only change really, and I'll show you that in a minute, is just the name change on the front of the building from Sierra Foods to StoreQuest. Let's see here. I'll jump to the next slide and give you an idea of its location in the mall. Do I have to do something there? Or do I just right here? Yeah, perfect. Okay. The StoreQuest facility is there in yellow, and immediately to the left is the annex, Reno Town Mall Annex. We have 6 restaurants in that area, and then which does require a fair amount of parking. And then in the mall, we have a new tenant that will be joining us shortly will be the Cup Cafe, and they'll be opening in the main mall, which is the, if you will, the white roof right next to StoreQuest. And that is the main Reno Town Mall. And then Burlington Coat Factory is, or Burlington Stores, is now out towards South Virginia, there in the kind of the more gray roof color that you see there. Let's see here, the Sierra Foods, formerly Sierra Foods, hopefully soon StoreQuest, is a 60,000 square foot vacant space at this point. And as probably all of you are pretty familiar, it's very difficult in this era, this time. I bought them all in 32 years ago. I was all of 10, right? At any rate, I bought them all, and we've seen a lot of changes in retail. Very difficult to backfill these large boxes. It was interesting because I sat through the local community hearing, and they were talking about the previous applicant was talking about putting in a hotel and restaurant casino to the south down near Fire Creek Crossing, and they were talking about the Sports Authority and the Circuit City, both of those large box users, similar to what this facility is, and they had been vacant for upwards to 10, 12, 14 years. So it is a changing environment with the thanks of Amazon and others. We're just seeing a different need, and that need now in this particular area of the community is the demand for climate-controlled self-storage, which right now there's none available. We have some of the general statistics, and I'll hit the next slide there, I guess. Okay. This slide will show within a 2-mile radius, which was a good part of the feasibility report that StoreQuest had provided for me. And that indicated about 24,500 households, 58% rental. This feasibility study was done probably 6-7 months ago. 58% rental and 14,250 households. Let's see, it was 20, so and on average, 30% of the renters have a need for storage units. 13 existing facilities exist. Only one of them, of all of those, are climate controlled, and it's totally full. And it is not StoreQuest, I might add. Once complete, we will only really satisfy about 29%, and that's prior to the advent of the new developments that are underway. This feasibility study did not factor those needs. They only dealt with what was existing and the demand that was existing right now. So we feel very good that we'll be meeting a community need. And with the transition of retail and the way people shop and their shopping habits, the mall has been addressing and dealing with these transitions. I would say it would be very safe to say now that we have become more of a community center rather than a retail shopping mall. We only have, I think we have five, maybe six pure retail shopping stores. And we have the Sierra View Library, which has been there for a good 15, 20 years. We transitioned, starting in about the early 2000s, we started transitioning the mall to servicing needs of the community. We have access healthcare there, affordable healthcare. We have RSCVA, of course, they manage the convention center. They're located there. So we have any number of, we have State of Nevada Job Connect. So we have encouraged reaching out to community need, and we feel this will be a very significant community need. And I don't think it got in time, Carter, but I just had our tenants just sign a statement, just signing a letter acknowledging how long they've been in the mall and their support of having StoreQuest as their neighbor. Obviously, the having a dark, empty 60,000 square foot building would not be advantageous for them. So they're looking at this as probably bringing people to the mall that would be coming for, coming in to pick up their kayak on the weekend, the weekend warrior, or whatever they have a need for. A lot of these apartments that are coming in, they don't have garages, so they'll need a place for private storage. In fact, just the vintage Redfield senior apartments that we're just talking about, 230 units, there may be folks that are coming there that may need a place to put something, and that's only a couple blocks, a block or two to the north. So lots of growth in that arena of residential living that this will cater to very, very well. And they find, StoreQuest tells me that the closer you can get to where the people are living, the much more beneficial it is, not only to them, but for those that are developing the projects, to have something where they can have this close by. So we'll, I think, be working in complement with many of the new communities that have gone in. And that will also spell, I think, more interaction with the community. And we do have now 7 restaurants with the advent of the Cup Cafe coming on board. And they're all very supportive of this because they feel they'll be more engaged with the entire community. So they've been very positive in support of this. Let's see here. The next slide, please. Okay. This is a picture of what it looks like going through the building. This would be an example of it. It'll be a polished cement floor, very clean, very neat. It's kind of very, more of a climate control, kind of a dust-free, very upscale storage type facility with, maintained temperatures. And of course, a lot of that pre-existing from when it was a grocery store. So that works very well for what they're proposing. 523 units and interior climate controlled, on-site staff. They'll be actually in office. They'll be open in the morning, I think sometime around 7 or 8, and they stay open, I think, till 7 or 8 at night. But again, StoreQuest sets that, so I'm just hearing that information from what is kind of their standard operation. And it's a secured facility. They'll be bringing, to the benefit of the entire shopping center, 24-hour security, and it will be 24-hour security and TV monitors throughout the entire property. So we're quite pleased with that addition, and we'll be working with them to obviously make sure that's monitored 24 hours a day. And that will be very beneficial for the shopping center as well. With the times are changing, and we have to spend more time trying to make sure that we keep an eye on the property and the facility. The next slide. This is on the exterior. This is all that will be changing. We have the Sierra Foods. That sign is actually still on the building. Sierra Foods has been gone for upwards just about a year now. And then they're keeping the mountain because StoreQuest's marketing approach is to go to those folks that are active lifestyles where they want to store their kayaks, store their golf clubs, store their skis or whatever, and be close to their community, their apartments or wherever they live. And so they want to retain the Sierra mountain look that's on top. And then they would use their name, of course, StoreQuest on the front. And that's what it would look like from the front. And that's basically the only change that would happen in them coming in on the exterior. And let's see here on the next slide. And this shows we have the annexes on the right. We have 6 restaurants there now, which has transitioned. We purchased that part of the shopping center about 6 years ago and then did a full fascia renovation there to tie into the mall and then re-landscaped the front of the mall and the front of the annex at that time. And then we have the Cup Cafe will be in the actual main mall, Reno Town Mall, and then Burlington, of course, on the left, and I think we've kind of covered that once before. Let's see here. Right now, we're underway with a major renovation for the library. They occupy the back third of the Reno Town Mall, first floor. And let's see here. We will be maintaining Dave Asher, who was the owner and operator of the Sierra Foods, and he now continues to operate in the mall with Nevada Marketplace. He will be working to put forward a farmer's market, which will be done either in the main mall on certain days when it's inclement, windy, or a problem, and then out in the parking lot. If he can get it set where it's a Wednesday, Saturday, or whatever it is, we'll be working with him on that. He's very excited about that. And then we have a convenience store, ABC Market, and they will be tripling in size. And they are at the very closest space in the annex, the building farthest to the right, next to the self-storage. And any questions? I'm here to answer them.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
We might have questions, but we'll ask you in a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Carter, do you have a presentation for us? Yes. Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Carter Williams, Assistant Planner for the record. Before you today is a request for a conditional use permit for a mini warehouse facility. It is located in Ward 2, southeast of Peckham Lane and South Virginia Street. To the north and the northeast is the Atlantis Hotel and Casino. To the east is the Reno Sparks Convention Center. To the south of the project site, there's a number of commercial uses. And then to the west, there is a large apartment complex. The property and all surrounding properties are located within the mixed-use urban zoning district. And the property carries the master plan land use designation of suburban mixed use. So the specific request today addresses the 60,000 square foot tenant space towards the southwest of the property. In the mixed-use urban zone, a conditional use permit is required to establish a mini warehouse facility. Key issues analyzed in the request are the mix of uses in the center, compatibility with the surrounding uses, and the adaptive reuse of the tenant space. Before you is a table showing the current and proposed mix of uses in the center now, and to be. Predominantly, retail and general personal service uses they're predominant in the center. That will remain with this proposed use and adds to that mix of uses with this self-storage facility. Recognizing that there is that apartment complex to the west, in respect of that, staff is recommending a number of conditions, including a security plan that requires external security cameras, a loading and unloading plan to kind of identify where that operation, those outdoor activities are taking place, and ensuring that it's not disrupting the vehicular and pedestrian traffic on the site. We are also proposing a condition that restricts customer access to the rear, which would probably have the most interface with that apartment complex to the west. And that restriction is between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. the following day. Mini warehouse facilities support master plan policies along urban corridors, encouraging higher density development. So staff recognizes that this may be meeting a demand with the increase in density in the area. Some of the issues that I think the applicant has been having with renting out the space, our code now addresses through this section for large retail establishments. This site was precedent to that code requirement so a lot of these standards weren't addressed. But I think it's a good guide, or it was used as a guide for staff in our analysis to identify what we can do to make this tenant space better for adaptive reuse in the future. One of the items that's addressed in that section is providing 4 accessible pathways to the tenant space. Currently, there is none, so that will that's proposed and recommended as a condition with this proposal. In addition to that, the applicant has stated that they would be upgrading the existing islands within the center and adding 10 new trees, which is depicted there. Other elements that are support adaptive reuse are the maintaining prominent customer entrance features on the building, with them not changing the facade and maintaining those vestibules on the front. They're doing that, even though it's a storage facility. There's some architectural integrity with the rest of the center, and generally that promotes adaptive reuse. So before you are the conditional use permit findings. Staff has through staff's review and analysis, we are able to meet all the findings. And before you is the recommended motion. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll come back to the commission for disclosures. We'll start with Commissioner Gower.
Thank you. Visited the site and received and read correspondence.
Commissioner Armstrong, I received and read emails.
Commissioner Draculich, familiar with the site, read and received emails.
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with the site and read emails.
Commissioner Johnson, same disclosures.
Commissioner Velto, same disclosures. We'll go to public comment and open up public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
We did receive correspondence for this item. I did not get any voicemails, and I don't have any requests to speak forms in front of me right now.
Great, thank you. Would anyone in the public like to speak on this item? Anybody on Zoom? Seeing none, we'll close public comment, come back to the commission for questions or discussion. Or a motion.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Johnson, I have a question for you, Carter. One of the conditions, and I appreciate it, and you mentioned it, was the understanding of the loading and unloading plan for this. It's a little, I guess, in terms of what I'm seeing, I'm a little, I guess, concerned looking at our finding for mitigating traffic impact that that's something that we don't actually have yet. The idea of, are we loading in from the back predominantly? What changes are there? There's some grade differential on the backside where the road is higher and than the entrance. So how is staff, I mean, are you resolving that finding based on whatever is coming? Or has there been some discussion with the applicant in terms of how they're proposing to address people carrying equipment across a driveway and looking at, parking areas for potential large vehicles, especially in the front, since you've limited access to certain hours in the back?
Yeah, so we didn't necessarily receive much like operational characteristics from the applicant at this time, and that condition was put in there so that we did have a time to address it, but also pair it with the code requirements for screening of loading areas and we have other standards for loading areas. So staff felt comfortable with the knowing that the trip generation was going to decrease from retail to self-storage, and with the code requirements in place to protect those neighbors to the west, as well as the loading and unloading plan for us was intending to retain the existing community center nature of this complex. So I don't know if the applicant has any information from StoreQuest that may address, if like, for instance, they made the comment that they do this a lot in centers. I don't know if they have that, but they may. That was something that we felt comfortable addressing later.
So I'll ask you in just a moment. I just want to follow up because you mentioned something that was a follow-up to mine, which was the idea of screening. And I'm wondering, obviously we've got an existing entrance that was designed to let people know it was there and bring people in. And that in looking at the plan, is also a major entrance for people bringing loading items in there. So how is the reconciliation of, a screened loading area, how does that work in staff's mind with an open parking lot in front of the facility?
I think a lot of our attention was placed on the western portion with that apartment complex with those residences. So for a lot of that area is already screened with the annex building that's placed there. And then there is landscaping that's placed along that element that I think we would protect from that area. Are you referring to other like screening from the street? Or?
Yeah, you mentioned the screening aspect of it. So is the intent that you're screening it from the immediate neighbors, or you're screening it from view from anybody?
Depending on, so from this, there is requirements for screening from the street. So depending on what that loading and unloading plan holds, it may require for some kind of screening element to be provided along the street, whether that's the landscaping area that exists there along the street today, or something further in to the closer to the tenant space itself.
Okay, thank you. And then I guess I will ask the applicant, Mr. Chair, if he can maybe respond to the question about the loading and unloading plan.
By the way, I bring this back. Walked away with it. Yes, when Carter had sent over the conditions, I talked with StoreQuest. They were very amenable because they don't normally have really any significant activity in those late hours, and they didn't plan to be utilizing that back loading area to any great extent either. They're going to continue to operate this very similar to the way the grocery stores did. They'll have carts, and you grab your gear, put it on a cart, and then you wheel it in. So they want to maintain the way the parking is situated, and they are going to very agreeable to putting in maybe a large marked area and no parking. And then we have big speed bumps on either side, which were existing prior with the grocery stores. So that's a very slow area for people to transit anyway. And it is in the back, if you will, from the front of the building. It's all the way in the southwest corner. So there's not a lot of through traffic that's going there. So we don't expect there'll be much traffic in front of the building. Less now because there won't be a grocery store there. But the grocery store never had any kind of a loading zone or anything close to it. It was in the parking lot. Everything was brought in through carts. And that's the way they find most of their uses will be through a cart that they have in front. There'll be a large area in the front there with a lot of carts for them to use.
So the anticipation for a potential renter for this is that there's no requirement that they load through the overhead doors in the back.
Oh, no.
They have the opportunity to load from wherever.
Well, they'll be given instructions based on what StoreQuest decides is the best way to do it. But with the condition that we've been placed, StoreQuest was totally comfortable with not using the back area. And their thought is that about 70, 80, or maybe even higher percentage will be out of the front. So they're not really thinking the back will be. This is a lot different than when we had the grocery stores and the deliveries came at 3:30 in the morning.
And I understand that, so I appreciate that. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the use of, because I think we've all had stuff in a storage unit at one point in time or another. So.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, if I may have one more question.
Please.
The image that you showed of the interior of the space was a very traditional unit, which has got about a 10-foot ceiling, floor to floor. Mm-hmm. You're substantially higher than that inside this space before you hit the structure above.
Yes.
So is there an intent ever to try to create a second story within the interior of this space?
It's pretty cost ineffective to do that. So it'd be very expensive to do. They haven't proposed it, and it would dramatically increase the cost. I'm not sure we'd want to do that kind of TI package.
And again, it was more of an understanding of how you were approaching this, because there is a substantial difference if you took the number of units that were here and added 2/3 to that, factoring in everything else that could.
And it would require elevators, it would require structural support.
Right.
I'm not even sure the exterior building would be able to accommodate the structural support for that. I think it would be dramatically more expensive. So at this point,
I would agree. I
Yes,
just need to get the
yeah.
question out there on the record, so thank you.
our plan is just to do the TIs for a very simple project. And
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Gower?
Robert, before you sit down, I have another question for you. Thinking about this in the context of adaptive reuse and compatibility, we received some comments from the public and the Neighborhood Advisory Board. How would you address the comment that says this is short-sighted redevelopment?
well, and I actually met that individual. She's part of the NAB board, and she. I've read the comments. Carter had sent them to me here yesterday. The redevelopment of the mall has been undergoing, really transitioning of the mall has been underway for probably 15, 20 years now. So we started seeing the viability of the Rayleighs when they were getting ready to vacate. They gave it a last ditch with a sideline company, but we could see it was kind of coming to an end. So our transition is to try and focus towards the community and what the community needs versus trying to wait it out to see if Sports Authority is going to reopen again and come in and want to be there. So we're not seeing the demand in that location. Burlington does very well out on South Virginia, but this is a very tucked away corner in the property. That big a building and that tucked away, there are other much more viable sites, and many of those have not even been relet. So we look at the opportunity to move in the direction that the community is really needing, and I think that would give the center a vitality for many years to come, rather than trying to live in what we had when I first bought the center 32 years ago. We just don't have that same environment today. So I do understand. In fact, I talked to her about that. Yeah. So.
And you're confident that this use is compatible with the other uses? It sounds
Well,
like you
yes.
we received the list of tenants who signed on to it, and they
Yes.
Okay.
All of our tenants are in favor of it. And so I just thought maybe to try and help ease the concern that I would share that our tenants have a very positive impact on this. They're also very excited about the security that it brings. People that will go to the mall will have a very secure place to be. We'll have a lot of security there, and that's something StoreQuest brings. And we'll be working with them to make sure that's 24 hours a day.
Great. Unrelated question, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any plans to add additional trees to your parking area aside from those 6 landscape islands?
Well, when I first met with Carter, he asked about that and said that, that would be nice to do. This project it's really a TI project, so we had not really looked at redoing the exterior. I think when I bought it 32 years ago, it wasn't really out of conformity. Today I know it is. But our first jump was to say, what we'll do is we'll just re-landscape those islands out there like we've done kind of in front of the mall and in front of the annex. We'll redo that, and we'll add 10 trees because a lot of those trees have died and kind of gone away. So we're going to replace it, re-landscape it, and bring it all up to looking good. And that will be across the front of the StoreQuest facility. And next thing's down the road, but it's very it probably costs as much to redo that as it's costing us to build out these shells for StoreQuest. Yeah.
Well, if you find any empty pennies or any extra pennies lying around, I'd encourage you to look to add that additional landscaping.
And Donna,
city would really benefit from seeing that in that parking area.
Yeah, and our neighbor Donna, she mentioned that very, very loud and clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Commissioner Villanueva, I can make a motion.
Please.
Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to conditions listed in the staff report regarding case number LDC 2300034.
Thank you, Commissioner Villanueva. We have a first. We have a second.
Commissioner Gower, second.
All those in favor?
Commissioner Johnson, can I have a quick moment of discussion? Thanks. No, I think this is actually an excellent opportunity for adaptive reuse for a site like this. I appreciate it. I do just want to reiterate, I have some concerns. We have a finding about traffic impacts, and we've basically been given a condition that it will be worked on separate from us. I think I received enough information this evening in discussion with the applicant and staff to satisfy that they're looking at it and they understand what needs to be done. But I do think that as a matter of being able to make that condition, having an actual site plan that identifies the issues and the approach would be a better way for us to have been able to make that finding and review this project. So rather than it just being a condition. So, but other than that, I am in favor of the project. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion, any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thanks so much and good luck. Thank you. Okay, we'll now move to agenda item number 5.4, which is case number LDC 23-00032, Jacobs Glow Plaza and Festival Area Amendment. Garrett, do we have a presentation?
It's nice to see all of you. It's not 2 a.m. We're at 7:30 still. For the record, Garrett Gordon, tonight on behalf of Jacobs Entertainment, before you is a request to make a very slight amendment to the existing Glow Plaza Festival Area conditional use permit. So back in May of last year, the Reno City Council, following a public hearing, approved the request for conditional use permit to allow the Glow Plaza to facilitate outdoor festivals, concerts, recreation, and events. That use permit came to this body. It was approved by this body, appealed up to the Reno City Council, and Reno City Council upheld your guys' approval. The request tonight is very narrow in that you can see on the left up here is the Sands, soon to be rebranded. And there are existing signs. And let me just be clear tonight for the record. This request has nothing to do with approval of signs. The signs shown here, a 65-foot by 65-foot reader board or LED sign, and this wrap reader board LED sign, which replaces the Mel sign that had been there for 20 plus years. These signs are approved, building permit in hand, purchased by Jacobs, and starting to be installed as I speak today. So those signs are going up and has nothing to do with your approval as of tonight. The narrow request for you tonight is simply, on these signs, we would like to list the schedule of events, what's taking place at the Glow Plaza. This is in direct response, but also to many master plan policies, but also in direct response to this body's approval of the conditional use permit to make sure the Glow Plaza is successful, to make sure tourists are coming, locals are coming, and there was even a condition put on the original conditional use permit that said, let's make sure on your signs you have a website address that lists your schedule of events, because it was important not only for locals, tourists, but the surrounding neighborhood to be aware of when there would be an event, because maybe they'd like to stay or attend, or maybe they'd like to go out of town that weekend if they didn't want to be next to a downtown event. So it's for transparency, it's for public disclosure, and really to have a successful venue and have a killer downtown festival area. So the request tonight is just to amend the original conditional use permit to add the Sands APN number to the conditional use permit to allow for promoting the Glow Plaza activities on the signage. So you can see here there are currently 7 parcels that consist of the Glow Plaza. The Sands is 1 parcel. The simple request is to add this APN to these 7 APNs So the site now consists of 8 APNs, and we can list our schedule of events on the calendar of events on those signs, so everyone knows to come on down to the Glow Plaza and enjoy some music with your neighbors. Again, our request is, you can see here, Glow Plaza site, adding the Sands APN number to the conditional use permit to allow for promoting on the Sands site. This is very similar, if not identical, to what the El Dorado currently does. Is that the El Dorado, you drive by the El Dorado, on their signs, it says, guess who's coming? Toby Keith. Where? Not on their premise, not within the four corners of the El Dorado or Silver Legacy, but a half a block away at the event center, which they don't own, or at the ballroom. So it's kind of common practice in order to have successful venues. Here, you're advertising for an event at a facility downtown to make sure it's successful. We probably could have, based on that precedent, argued we didn't need this request tonight, but belt and suspenders, full transparency, making sure the first time we listed the calendar of events that no one said, who knows sign law, hey, technically that could be considered an off-premise advertising because the Sands APN is not listed on the Glow Plaza use permit APN. So we're here tonight in response to staff to make sure we're transparent, belt and suspenders, and making sure it's clear to the whole community when they see, hopefully, the schedule of events of what's happening, why those are on the Sands signs. So here you can see the decision letter that came out in May that listed the 7 APNs. Tonight, if approved, you would add this APN number to the original approval. I will say, and I give staff, I want to thank Leah, she was great to work with as always, but there's 2 additional conditions. So the use permit will consist of the original conditions 1 through 23, aren't modified, agree to them, but conditions 24 and 25, there was some discussion, it came up at the NAB, of, well, if you're adding this APN to the Glow Plaza use permit, are you going to be allowed to have some of the Sands uses, i.e. gaming, that somehow magically, without Gaming Control Board approval or Gaming Commission approval, would magically be moved to the Glow Plaza? The answer is no, that's not legal. But belt and suspenders, staff thought it was important, we agreed. Condition now reads, no existing uses on the Sands parcel are all automatically allowed by virtue of tonight's hopeful approval on the Glow Plaza, and vice versa. At the Glow Plaza, we have an outdoor amusement event use by the use permit. That now doesn't transfer to the Sands. So we can't have in the parking lot at the Sands some event because we have a use permit for the Glow Plaza. So completely separate uses, not changing the rights to either of those parcels. It's simply, I couldn't have said it better. I appreciate staff's sentence here. Condition number 4, the extension of this conditional use permit on parcel 007-54215, the Sands, is solely to allow for the inclusion of the Sands Regency Casino Hotel parcel within the Glow Plaza Festival site area for the purpose of allowing on-premise Glow Plaza Festival signage on the Sands parcel. Very simple request, and I believe it meets all the findings. I would close with a couple things. Here is on the right what I came before you last year of the plan. On the left, that's a picture from today. We are moving forward. You can see even in light of the weather that we've had. The stage is up to the right. To the left is a shade structure. And I thought it was important to show, one of the questions I got when I appeared before this body is, are you guys really just going to be open 3 or 4 months a year? I mean, how are you going to deal with the weather? You can see here, we're putting up a tent, and we already have 2 festivals coming in February, approved by staff, special activity permits. We think between 500 and 1,000 people to kick off this venue now in the winter, activating downtown, getting people downtown, and normally a dormant time of year. So we're excited for those events. We also have a Cinco de Mayo event coming already. We have a Latino festival coming, a long list that we'd love to throw up on the signs. So all of you, all of Reno, any tourists coming in who maybe we bring them back again in a couple months to spend more money on gaming and rooms, but also for all the surrounding neighborhood to understand what's going on. So I think this request meets all the findings. We agree with the amended conditions of approval. And going to the master plan policies that staff cited in their staff report, I think this hits every single one. I mean, number one was policy 6.6A, community events and activities. Obviously, you want to bring the community to these events. How are you going to do it? You're going to have your calendar of events on signs that are next door to the property. Arts and culture, the Latino group, as I understand it, have been trying for a long, long time to get an event in downtown Reno. Finally, they came to us and we put together a package for them that they're very happy with. Tourism, entertainment, master plan policy, encouraging tourism and entertainment. Obviously, just like the El Dorado does, trying to attract folks to come and go to a concert that's on a city property, to come get hotel rooms and spend some money at the El Dorado. No different here. So appreciate your time. I appreciate you listening to me. I thank staff, and I'm here for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Leah, do we have a presentation?
I sure do. Thank you, Chairman. For the record, Leah Brock, Assistant Planner. I'm going to follow up on Mr. Garrett's presentation with just a few added details about how staff came to the recommendation of approval on this request. So just to go over it, the site, including the Sands parcel, would be 8.373 acres. That's the 7 parcels off to the side there in the existing entitlement, and then the acreage where the Sands is located. Again, this is an amendment to the conditional use permit to expand the permit boundary to include the additional parcel where the Sands is located for the purpose of promoting Glow Plaza on that additional parcel. The existing entitlement is located in the mixed-use downtown northwest quadrant zoning district. That's on the map there in purple and outlined in blue. The proposed amendment would add the parcel that's in orange, outlined in blue, which is in the mixed-use downtown entertainment district, but it's also in the gaming overlay. To give you a little bit of background, this was approved by the Planning Commission in March, and then it was appealed, and then it was approved by the City Council in May of 2022, last year. Key issue related to this request is general code compliance. Here you can see the signage regulations in both the gaming overlay and the mixed use district. Here you can see that basically the sand site within the gaming overlay, there's no maximum area limit for freestanding signs or wall signs. So approval of this amendment would allow Glow Plaza to advertise events using the unlimited signage permitted in the gaming overlay on the Sands parcel. Again, as Mr. Garrett pointed out, the signage is already approved. Building permits have been issued, and my understanding is that it's going to be installed any day. Staff did receive approximately 15 letters of opposition and comments from one NAB member. A lot of the concerns were related to this signage and don't approve the signage, so I just want to point out that the signage is approved. This is really a question of content. So how did we arrive at this? Per Reno Municipal Code, the definition of site does not require all parcels within the site to be connected, to have a common boundary line, or to be adjacent. The request to add this parcel with the Sands to the existing site entitlement for Glow Plaza is allowed within Reno Municipal Code. As of 2001, the City of Reno does not allow for off-premise advertising. Per Reno Municipal Code, if the parcel with the gaming overlay is added to the Glow Plaza site, advertising for events at the Glow Plaza will be allowed on that parcel because it will be considered on-site signage. Again, the purpose of the CUP amendment is to allow for the Glow Plaza to advertise under the gaming overlay on the Sands parcel. Should the application be approved, staff recommends adding these 2 additional conditions of approval. Mr. Gordon went over those. On the board are the conditional use permit findings. Staff recommends approval of the proposed request with those added conditions. That concludes my presentation. The recommended motion is on the screen, and I am available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll come back to the commission for disclosures, and we'll start again with Commissioner Gow.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have previously visited the site. I spoke with the applicant's representative and received and read the correspondence that we received.
Commissioner Armstrong, I read and received emails. I'm familiar with the site, and I met with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Dracula, same disclosures.
Commissioner Villanueva, I read emails. I'm familiar with the site.
Commissioner Johnson, in addition to being familiar with the site and receiving and reading emails, I do have a disclosure to read regarding item 5.4, the Jacobs Glow Plaza and Festival Area Amendment. Fellow Commissioners, at the applicant's request, I am disclosing the fact that my wife, Alicia Barber, publishes a blog known as the Barber Brief regarding her opinions on certain developments in the city of Reno. On this matter, I have sought guidance from the city attorney's office. Pursuant to NRS 281A.4204A, the law presumes that the independence of judgment of a reasonable person in the public officer's situation would not be materially affected by the public officer's commitment in a private capacity to the interests of another, where the resulting benefit or detriment accruing to the other person is not greater than that accruing to any other member of any general business, profession, occupation, or group that is affected by the matter. Here, I have a commitment in a private capacity to my wife. Item 5.4 is a request for an amendment to a conditional use permit to expand the permit boundary to include an additional parcel for the purpose of promoting Glow Plaza on the additional parcel of a site located west of 4th Street, east of Washington, and 200 feet west of Ralston Street, called the Jacobs Glow Plaza and Festival Area. While my wife recently published opinions in her blog drawing attention to the potential impact of the project on residents living in the immediate vicinity, the benefit or detriment of the project accruing to my wife is not greater than that accruing to any other member of general public. The independence of judgment of a reasonable person in my situation would not be materially affected by my commitment in a private capacity to my wife, and because this is not a clear case of disqualifying conflict of interest, I am making this disclosure, but do not intend to recuse myself from this item. Please accept this disclosure and lodge it on the record for this meeting and subsequent meetings pertaining to this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Velto, not the same disclosures. I am familiar with the site. I spoke with the applicant's representatives. I received and reviewed emails. And with that, we will open up public comment. I have 2 requests to speak forms. We'll start with Mr. Mark Ray.
Good evening. My name is Mark Ray, and I'm the pro bono lawyer for a civic group called Scenic Nevada, which has been dealing with signs in Reno for about 23 years. I wanted to stress the importance of standards that have already been mentioned by you all in various times tonight, and about we all know that sometimes hardships or unique problems cause us to vary those standards. But tonight, we're being asked to vary those standards, not because there's any unique hardship or unavoidable obstacle, but simply because they want to. We just want to do it. That's the excuse. And what matters is the slippery slope and the privilege inconsistent with the code that was mentioned here tonight by one or more of you. I can't remember which one, but as we all know, casinos have unlimited sign privileges. But they are casinos, and that's why they get them, historically. Whereas non-casino uses, all of the rest of the businesses in town, like mine, have on-premise sign regulations, and we can't have billboards. Tonight, you're being asked to give a billboard, an off-premise sign for the benefit of the festival, by the guise or trick or the pretense of saying that it's part of the same thing as the casino. But we all know that's not true. It's not true. A casino is a casino, and it has unlimited signs, and it's specially privileged, but no one else is. None of the rest of the businesses in town are. But we're being told the slippery slope example was given. One of the other casinos advertises stuff next door, and you can see how this works. You approve this tonight, the slippery slope is the next casino or gaming overlay property owner is going to want the same thing. So please, let's have standards. That's why you're here, for the people. The constituency, I hope that you recognize, is all of us, not just Scenic Nevada, which has a very strong interest from our history with the ordinance that you're all familiar with, but because everyone in this town needs to count on you as being the gatekeepers to keep the standards in place, the rules that we all must follow. As a lawyer, I'm particularly aware of that, and I know that all of you are as well, the rule of law. Make no mistake, what's happening here is a request for an off-premise sign. Off-premise from the festival onto a casino sign. If you allow this for the client of Mr. Gordon tonight, then what's to stop the next representative from coming here from a gaming property and asking for the same thing? Please don't allow that to happen. So respectfully, with all due respect, I ask you not to follow the staff's recommendation. I ask you to follow the law for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. We now have Miss Lori Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, Commissioners. I'm a director of Scenic Nevada as well. We're opposed to this amendment. The Globe Plaza has the right to erect its own digital sign on its own property to advertise its upcoming concert events. It can also pay for advertising space on the many standard and digital billboards in the region. And I think that was incorrect in the staff report that they can't have a digital sign. They can. This amendment is unnecessary and it will cause problems in the future if it's approved. Allowing the Globe Plaza to advertise on the Sands digital sign would change the legal on-premises sign into a digital billboard. And as my husband was just telling you, digital billboards are not permitted in Reno. The Sands and Globe Plaza are just trying to get around the ban on digital billboards, and that shouldn't be allowed. The Sands signs to be built are using the city's gaming overlay regulations. Only casinos can have them. That's in footnote 11 of the sign code chart. The Globe Plaza is not a casino, it's a concert venue. Staff has not addressed footnote 11. No one else gets to do this, as my husband was saying. You're creating a slippery slope, and anyone with a digital sign will want to take advantage of this. So any on-premise, there's a lot of digital on-premise sign owners in town. And if they see this could really expand. They could start advertising anything they want, and it would really dilute our sign code. So the amendment blurs the lines between on and off premises, which have been in place for decades in many communities across the nation. And it would jeopardize the validity of our own sign code. It opens up risks of lawsuits from those who want digital billboards. They're not allowed. And a digital standard billboard sign owner is going to say, what the heck? All of the on-premise signs are advertising off-premise, are having off-premise ads. So we don't want to go down that road. We worked really long and hard to ban the new construction of billboards and to prohibit billboards, that is. If you have to approve this tonight, limit the Globe Plaza signs to the smaller of the 2 cent signs. The representative to the NAB, the Jacobs representative at the NAB said it would only be placed on the smaller sign on the scrolling side near the one near Mel's. So then condition them to that smaller sign. The other thing is we think there should be another condition that really does clearly address the fact that the Globe Plaza parcel cannot have gaming overlay signs on its parcel. It's the way it's presented in the staff report, it's difficult to understand what that means. So that would be another condition. So actually, we don't think you should approve, and we don't think findings 1 and 6 can be made. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other requests to speak forms?
I did not get any other request to speak forms. We did receive correspondence that was distributed to the commission before the meeting, and I don't have any voicemails.
Thank you. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak? They probably couldn't speak without us letting them, could they? Fair. Would anyone in the public like to speak on this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Come back to the commission for questions. I have questions.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Johnson, I don't think you can start the questioning as the chair, unfortunately.
I
so-
just read through the bylaws and I think I'm allowed to.
Okay, then go ahead.
Actually, just a few minutes ago.
Can we ask counsel?
Leah, I have a couple questions for you. Something was said during public comment that the Glow Plaza is able to erect a billboard on site. Is that correct?
Let's see. Give me just a sec. Let me find my sign code. So they would be allowed 125 square foot maximum freestanding sign with a maximum height of 25 feet. It does say 35 feet if the parcel fronts a street posted at 35 miles an hour or greater, but I just drove down 4th Street to see if it was 35, and it is 25 through that area.
Understood. Do you have an opinion as to whether the Glow Plaza erecting a new billboard and advertising on it would be more or less detrimental to the public than advertising on a billboard that already exists?
No opinion.
Okay. And I just want to be clear as to what's in front of us. The signs that are on the building currently on the sands, the billboards, those will still exist no matter what.
Yes, they will.
Will they have the same size?
The thing about entitlements is that the entitlement is permanent. So 40 years from now, if those signs are defunct or we have new kinds of signs or things like that, those could be installed as well. So again, gaming overlay, unlimited signage.
The existing billboard doesn't change in size as a result of our vote tonight?
No, it does not.
Doesn't change in color?
Nope.
Doesn't change in illumination?
Only in content.
Only in content. So that's the only difference will be the content of the billboard that exists on sands tonight.
That is correct, yes. It's only the content.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Johnson, did you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Leah, just to understand and I guess piggyback on that, so they are allowed by right on the Glow Plaza, 125 square feet, 25 foot high digital signage.
Yes,
Okay, so that's allowed
that is allowed,
based
yes.
on where they're at. So how does that compare to, say, another outdoor festival area in town, say Bartley Ranch, Wingfield Park?
I don't know the zoning of those offhand, but I could probably find out and get back to you with it.
That's okay. I know what the signs look like there.
Okay.
I guess, so in staff's opinion, to answer, I guess the next question is, the signage that's being presented this evening on the sands, they could do more.
Absolutely.
They could do another 65 by 65 sign facing south.
Yes, they sure could.
And under this approval, all of that would be allowed to advertise there. Let me go back to, I guess, the flip side of this. If there is a digital sign allowed on the Glow Plaza site, under this special use permit, can that sign advertise functions at the sands?
No. Maybe.
And why is that?
Yes, actually, I believe that they could. I'm sorry.
So
it would be
then that
included in the
gives-
site, so it would be on-premise advertising, yes.
So, okay. So basically, this is allowing the advertisement because you're putting you're putting it all and considering it one site. They can both locations can advertise what's happening at the other location.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to that and say that our conditions of approval that we added actually do not allow for advertising the sand on the Glow Plaza site. I believe we restricted that in condition number 24.
Okay. And then to the point, I think, that was raised with respect to master plan conformance, and I posed this question previously on this. My understanding is our purview on this is simply a signage purview. So we're looking purely at the addition of the parcel to allow for signage.
Yes.
And so the master plan conformance items that you're looking at here are because you believe that putting the digital advertisement on a bigger sign than what they're already allowed is in conformance with these specific requirements.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Villanueva?
So Leah, can you tell me who owns the sands?
I do not have the name of the owner in my packet, but I'm sure that the applicant can tell you who it is. The applicant is Reno Real Estate Development, LLC.
Okay, so the applicant here, the applicant here is, who's the applicant in this?
The applicant for this item is Reno Real Estate Development, LLC.
So, and you don't know if the same applicant owns the sands? I guess what I'm getting at is, why isn't the sands here asking for off-site advertising? It's their signage.
I'm going to defer to
Okay.
Mr. Gordon on that one.
Okay, thank you. Leah?
For the record, Garrett Gordon, thank you for the question. So the Glow Plaza 7 parcels are owned by the applicant tonight, Reno Real Estate Development. The Sands is owned by JSR LLC. All those 7 property owners signed owner affidavits to allow for this entitlement to move forward. The applicant, you have to pick one, is the Glow Plaza because we're amending the conditional use permit that's in Reno Real Estate Development's name.
I guess why, it seems like from a practical perspective, it would make sense that the sands, it's their signage and they're seeking off-site content.
No.
No, and why is that? Because I mean, I get you're requesting a condition amendment, right? Because the condition is on the festival grounds, right?
Correct. The use permit is on the festival grounds in the name of the owner of those 7 parcels for the festival grounds, Reno Real Estate Development, right? We want to amend the condition to allow to add the sands parcel, and part of our application process is consents from both of those owners to allow for this change.
But why that route? Why not just why? I guess I'm trying to figure out why that's the route, because it could be the same application through the sands, but asking for I mean, it's their ads, and they could be able to seek off-premise content. Whereas in this, I see it like in the reverse. So I mean, it seems like it would be, by doing it this way, it would be allowing for sands advertising on the Glow Plaza.
So if you look at the condition that Leah read, the extension of this conditional use permit, and again, that's why we're here, Reno Real Estate Development is the owner of the property, named applicant of the entitlement.
Yep.
And
I understand that.
they want to put, the schedule of events on the sands.
I get
So it
that.
says here, is solely to allow for the inclusion of the Sands Casino parcel. We have an owner affidavit from I mean, just for the record.
Yeah.
They're both owned by Jacobs Entertainment, just
Okay.
different affiliates, like different affiliates. So this is all owned by Jacobs
Okay.
Entertainment. Parcel within the Glow Plaza Festival site area for the purpose of allowing on-premise Glow Plaza Festival signage on the Sands Regency Hotel parcel. So Sands is saying, yep, we consent to you putting up your calendar of events. We're changing the use permit to create a site And I would say, if you look at the analysis on page 2 of the staff report, when it talks about a site, it says, it can be a single ownership or has multiple owners or multiple parcels as long as it's part of that development request. So we took staff's direction of our development request for this project is now an additional parcel because we want to put up the calendar of events for it. So pretty simple change.
So how is that similar to what's happening with the El Dorado? Because you said it's the El Dorado advertising off-premise content, like off-premise advertising. So how is this similar to that? I mean, they're different owners in that case. It's just, I imagine, I mean, how does that work? I don't understand the analysis there between the similarity between the two. Because this is the same owner and they're both seeking off-site content through this application. But how is that the same as what El Dorado does with the convention center?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is as straightforward as you can come because it's the same owner, same project, same district moving forward with advertising. My point was, some of the public comment you heard hasn't had any heartburn with the El Dorado saying Toby Keith is coming to City of Reno property. I'm not here to opine on sign code or say what entitlements they should or shouldn't have to do that. But what we're saying, what we're being held to here is saying if you're going to advertise for something that's not on your parcel, you need to come and add that parcel to your project.
I guess it depends what they're advertising. Are they advertising rooms tied to the Keith? I mean,
No, they're having, you've driven by downtown. It says Miranda Lambert coming or Toby Keith coming or Elton John coming.
and it's off premises.
And it's on the El Dorado property and it's the Reno Event Center, which is a block away. And there hasn't been any concern about that whatsoever for the last decades. We're being held, I believe, to a higher standard, which is good because we want to be transparent. And we came here before you to be transparent about what we're doing. So when you drive by and see the schedule of events, someone someplace doesn't say, wait, is that really off premise? Because your parcel, the Sands parcel is really not on the Glow Plaza parcel. And so we said, let's just do the right thing. Let's come here before you, make our case. And, I look at all the findings and we meet every single one of them for content. There's no harm. There's no finding that cannot be made. And I would say Mr. Ray is completely confused with the standards and the conditions. He's talking about hardships. That, as this body knows, is a variance. We're not talking about a variance. We're not talking about an exception. We're talking about an amendment to a conditional use permit. And can the findings be made? And the answer is absolutely yes, they can.
Okay, Chair, no further questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions for staff, please. The first question, just so I'm 100% clear, we're not being asked to make any sort of judgment regarding any other aspect of the project other than the inclusion of this parcel for the advertising of content on the Sands sign.
That is correct. Yes.
Everything else that we had looked at previously is outside the scope.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. Next question is related to the signage. Does the Glow Plaza set of parcels still have its ability to construct that sign, or does the inclusion of the additional parcel constitute their signage?
The Glow Plaza site would still be allowed signage per what's allowed in the mixed use sign code, mixed use district.
Even though it's part of a single permitted site area now?
Yeah.
Permit area?
That's a good
Inclusion of
question.
the additional parcel because they're advertising their content on site,
Yes.
does that constitute their sign?
Hold on, I'm trying to find my sign code. I believe they would still be allowed the signage that would be allowed on that site per that district. Yes.
Why?
I'd have to dig through sign code. Can you give me a second to answer that?
Just trying to get an answer to that, and I would
Okay.
appreciate that answer on record. Garrett, maybe I can ask you a question. Leah, if you wouldn't mind looking that up, that'd be awesome. Garrett, we heard in public comment concern, as I understood it, essentially of setting a precedent here with using properties within the gaming overlay district to advertise content for properties outside of it. And that could potentially result in the expansion of signage within the gaming overlay district. Do you think that we've opened a Pandora's box here, or is this, I'll leave it at that. Do you think we've opened a Pandora's box here?
Thank you for the question, for Garrett Gordon. I would say absolutely not, given the uniqueness of the situation. I mean, we have a use permit for an outdoor amusement. I don't think you can look at that as anyone else in and around downtown or in and around gaming areas having that use permit. And if you, without that use permit, I don't know what the vehicle would be if you were having an activity and then wanting to advertise on gaming. You would maybe have to come in and ask for a variance and show hardship, or you would have to come in with a development agreement and make the case, right? You'd have to modify code somehow. Here, we're not asking to modify code. There's no text amendment, there's no development agreement, there's no variance, there's no waiver. It's just in the guise of a use permit of the defined term site, which doesn't have to be contiguous, right? Doesn't have to have multiple owners, and adding a parcel to the site for the benefit of advertising for the use on that site.
I think that's the concern, right? It's the non-contiguous nature of it. So you could have a property that's in South Reno that wants to be advertising its events, and I'm just, any sort of site anywhere else in the city saying, we have these events, hey, downtown Reno hotel, let's use your signage privileges to erect larger signs to advertise this content. I mean, I think that's the concern, right? I mean, that's what I heard. And that's why I'm asking you if you think that this is a precedent that we're setting. Because, I mean, it's a serious question, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, one, if there's precedent, it's happening at the El Dorado. And there's never been a complaint or a code violation or anything that I'm aware of. And two, what's the vehicle? Because having an event in South Reno and trying to advertise downtown, you'd have to come to this body and change code to do that, come with a development agreement and do that, or have a use permit and try to do it. And you look at the definition of site, which here we're expanding our site, that it's all within the development request. And so, I just don't see it. So to be honest, I don't think we're setting any kind of precedent here. I'm not worried about it. Staff isn't worried about it. It's happening downtown already. And I think it's just a really cool way to get people to activate this space that this body approved as a really good opportunity and investment to activate downtown, which is in compliance with the downtown action plan for this type of use.
Thank you. Thanks, Garrett. Leah, any luck on that question?
So it has to do with frontages. And I would say that in this particular case, there's two separate frontages. One for the parcel with the sands, and then one for the parcels with the existing entitlement. However, it also says here under area wall maximums, it breaks it down per parcel there. So theoretically, all wall sign area shall not exceed 400 square feet per parcel. So I think we can safely say that there's two separate frontages for this site. So each frontage would be allowed the signage. And I know that that's how we've looked at it before.
Okay. Thank you. I think I might be more confused now, but let me digest that a minute. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, can I follow up on the line of questioning that Commissioner Gower had with Mr. Gordon?
Sure, please.
Mr. Gordon? So, and I appreciate your answer. I think you were spot on with the what's in place here and what's being presented to us, and I do understand it. I guess the question that I have is, we also know, and you mentioned in response to Commissioner Villanueva, that this is all actually owned by one overriding entertainment, Jacobs Entertainment, who does actually own more than just these two parcels in the area. So maybe to Commissioner Gower's point, I guess I would use the question to you specifically to this area. We have a conditional use permit in place, which is being proposed to be added onto, which is here, but that's not all of the things that may be happening under the Jacobs Entertainment umbrella in this area. So to Commissioner Gower's point, are we opening up the situation where this is going to continue to be amended so that whatever activities may be occurring under the Jacobs Entertainment umbrella would be able to tie in and benefit through this by continually adding parcels to this particular application? In terms of just looking ahead, we're doing it very specific to this, but under this amendment to the CUP and this process as a precedent that we're setting, should there be another, activity space that's developed in that area, could this be amended again to add additional sort of sites to this, opening up the opportunity for more things to be advertised there? And I guess it's still specific to this particular site and condition, but I guess that's maybe just as a follow-up to Commissioner Gower's line of questioning.
I would answer one on the legal side, right? To meet the findings tonight, it's not what could or should happen in the future, it's what's before you. But to your good policy question, I think the answer is no, because what's happening tonight is a use permit for the Glow Plaza, right? For outdoor amusement, outdoor entertainment. We couldn't amend that use permit to bring in other parcels for other uses. That's a standalone use, a standalone project to advertise on the sand signage. If there's other uses that come in, they're gonna have to stand alone on their separate entitlements. Like, this is only to advertise for the Glow Plaza. If something else came down the line in the future, it A, would require likely an entitlement, or B, couldn't tag on to this because this only deals with outdoor entertainment. And if we did try to expand that, we'd have to come back to you and meet the same findings.
And so which then would be bringing up the precedent question again, where if there is a different activity that comes in, could that other activity, whatever it is, again, to the point of precedent, could that other activity also include the sands parcel under its conditional use permit in order to achieve the same signage benefit for whatever that activity is, whether it's outdoors, indoors, public, private, whatever?
I don't think there's any prohibition in code when defining a site that a site is limited to one entitlement, right? I mean, you've had parcels come before you and they get entitled for different things. So there's no prohibition on that.
But the same understanding, the same process would have to come into place as is coming in this evening, is your understanding of what we're doing. So again, to the question of precedent, the process that we're going through here tonight would have to be retained for any other similar activity because it involves some level of entitlement.
Yeah, you'd have to have, as site is defined in code, it talks to a development request, right? It has to be all the same development request, and staff interpreted that as, well, your sands parcel was not part of your development request. It didn't have that APN, right? So we added that APN. But so in the future, if a use we had required a use permit, then yeah, we would list all the parcels we would want to be part of that site under that development request, and you would weigh whether or not the findings could be made for some unknown future potential use.
Thank you, and I appreciate you going down the hypothetical road with me. I'm just trying to understand because precedent is, as everybody in this room has discussed, concerning to us. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. And then just one last question, Mr. Chair, for staff. And we've heard this evening the example of a situation similar to this at another property in town. Has there been any verification of that from staff that that's actually happening? Because I can't say that I have any knowledge one way or the other. So if it's being used as something that's already happening, I guess I'm just questioning if staff has looked into that as an existing situation.
Leah Brock, for the record, not that I know of.
Chairman?
Thank you.
May I?
Yes, Commissioner, please.
A question for, actually, I don't know. It might be Leah. Leah, so I think I'm understanding this a little bit more. Earlier, we had Chairman ask, is this an issue of content? But now that I'm hearing that this is really just an amendment to the CUP and the use, it's really not content focused, because if it was content focused, this would be a matter of the Sands asking for permission to have off-premise advertising. But really what's happening, at least I'm trying to understand it, so please correct me if I'm wrong. What is happening is not an issue of content, but just an amendment to the land, or an amendment to the CUP to incorporate a second parcel into what's allowed, like the advertising that's allowed?
So this is an amendment to the CUP to expand the boundary of that original 2 acres to include the parcel where the Sands is. And I just want to be clear, there's no pathway for the Sands to apply for off-premise signage. That's not something that would be allowed. So the only pathway for this would be to include the Sands parcel in the entitlement for the Glow Plaza so that it would be considered on-site signage.
On-site. So that's what we're doing. It's on-site, and it's really not content related.
So when it comes to the signs themselves, that's content related, right? Because we're saying that the signs already exist. And so really, when it's a question about those signs, it's not whether or not those signs are going up or how big those signs are going to be or any of that. So in that aspect, it's content related because those signs exist.
So we're not differentiating here between off-site and on-site. We're just basically saying it's on-site. We're just expanding that boundary.
Exactly.
And the content's going to stay the same.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Discussion?
I appreciate all the, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Draklich, I appreciate all the discussion and questions, because I think even going into this, I had a couple of these questions, felt like they were answered, but expanding on those did bring me some more clarity. I mean, I guess what I see is, something that's consistent with downtown and its goals and what they're trying to do and trying to bring activity, and really my support for the Glow Plaza, whatever, a year ago when we went about that route. So I do feel a lot clearer on everything. So I do appreciate the conversation. It was helpful to help me make my decision. I'd be approving this going forward.
Commissioner Gower?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Put on the record, number one, that based on staff's response to my question in terms of the limited scope of this request, I am able to separate the decision-making process from when we saw this the first time, to be specific to this request. So I don't feel that I necessarily have to incorporate any of that information previously, since it's so narrow. I am concerned about the precedent question, and I don't have any findings in my set of conditional use permit findings or general review findings that address precedent. So I have to reconcile that by thinking that each individual consideration, if they were to be the same as this in the future, would be evaluated under their own unique criteria. But I do want to put on the record that that is a concern relative to the potential proliferation of signage to advertise what was previously considered off-premise. But given the scope of our decision-making and our findings, I am able to make the findings.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess and appreciate Commissioner Gower's points, because this is a very narrow request that we're looking at. And I agree, there's, looking at this through that very narrow lens, a lot of the other discussion points, and again, to precedent, are challenging. I guess the one issue that I still struggle with on this, and Commissioner Gower's point, and even some of my questioning, is that this site is already entitled with a larger benefit for signage. Because it's on 4th Street, it gets animated signage. So the Glow Plaza itself is entitled through our code to a larger digital sign than any other outdoor venue in the city. Everything else is a static display, it's a smaller display. Indoor spaces, there are a few that have digital signs, but again, they're based on where they're located. So there is already a benefit in our code to allow for a larger sign than would be expected to promote what is happening on the site. And so I guess I'm questioning in my mind that if, what is already allowed there and what is allowed by right with the conditional use permit, and trying to reconcile that with what is being asked, and questioning whether we are actually going beyond the intent of Title 18. I understand staff's interpretation of it, but I just question the fact that if one parcel that is not technically part of this activity center is entitled to unlimited signage for a function that is completely different than what is happening here, I just find it challenging to bring those two together for a very specific purpose, to go above and beyond what our code has already emphasized. So to me, I do struggle with making, finding number one under the conditional use permit, because I do question what we're doing and having that meet the purpose of the zoning district in which the site is located. And I'm looking at that zoning district being the Glow Plaza, which was the development, and bringing this other site into that for the purposes of a very specific thing that was not allowed, even with the added benefit, to me, I don't think is meeting the intent of this title. So, and again, I'm trying to look at it through that very narrow lens of how this signage aspect works. And that is the one finding that I just cannot wrap my head around, despite all of the assurances in the staff discussion that we've had this evening. That's still how I struggle with it. So thank you for the discussion and the questions this evening.
The master plan has an entire guiding principle number 3, which is encouraging a thriving downtown and university district. Some of the portions of the master plan, 3.1C, tourism entertainment, is to encourage reinvestment in established casinos and the introduction of new uses and activities that strengthen downtown's appeal as a tourism and entertainment destination. Strive to make downtown the location of choice within the region for annual events, cultural celebrations, and other community gatherings. 3.3B talks about tourism, arts, and entertainment. It says we should continue to support casinos as a core component of the city's tourism industry and the downtown entertainment district, while seeking to broaden the range of tourism, arts, and entertainment-oriented uses that appeal to more diverse demographics. I guess I'm confused why this is an issue. We agreed to support the Glow Plaza, and that is already going forward. We should be doing everything we can to now encourage it to exist, consistent with the master plan. So, I understand there's a concern about a slippery slope. I think that's a fallacy for a reason. I think that I agree with you, Commissioner Gower. We should, on each project, individually assess our own opinion and not point back to precedent, because that's a dangerous way to look at it in our role. And on a case-by-case basis, we should evaluate it. But here, we don't want this project to fail. There's going to be a sign no matter what. It's a question of what that sign says. I see no special benefit. I don't see any inconsistencies with the zoning code. I think the way that staff reads the zoning code is the way that I read the zoning code. And I think that if we have any discussion, any like concern as to what it means or what Title 18 means, you know, a safe bet for us to assess it is to then look at the master plan. And the master plan overwhelmingly supports what the applicant is trying to pursue. And that's why it's easy for me to vote on this. And that's partially why I took the lead in questioning, because I was really struggling with some of the opposition because I didn't think it was well-founded in what they were proposing. This is a very small change that's allowed by the code, and it does good consistent with the master plan. So that's kind of my view on this project.
Here, may I? Oh, I'll let Commissioner Johnson go.
And I appreciate that. I guess the one point of rebuttal I would make is that in that entire master plan with discussion about supporting it and supporting casinos and supporting a thriving downtown, there's not a single mention about that support being based on approving digital signage to let everybody know what's going on down there. The Glow Plaza itself and the activities that are a part of this discussion by this body's finding and by council's finding meet all of those master plan code requirements. And I'm not going to revisit that right now, but to state that the master plan and all of the encouragement that we have to do includes.
Ties into what the applicant said was the Eldorado's offsite advertising, because they're two different things. This is an application. This is not a request for offsite advertising. This is an expansion of the boundary, which I mean, I think that's what makes this particular application unique and why I don't think it would set precedent, because it's very rare. In this case, it is the same applicant. Essentially, from my understanding, it's the same owner. Whether I agree with whether the project went through or not, that was a different decision. In this case, same owner. It's essentially advertising on-site premises, or it's on-site, on-premises content. This is not an off-site premises request. So I don't know why the applicant brought up the Eldorado. I don't think it applies. So in any case, I don't necessarily agree with everything Alex said, but I think we can get to the same conclusion just in a different way. My viewpoint is because this particular application is owned essentially by the same applicant, it's essentially, and it's just expanding the boundary. I think that's what sets us apart from other parcels or other entities, other businesses, other casinos, and their requests for what may be off-site premises advertising. So I think that's how I can get to the yes. Regardless of how I feel about the project, this is a narrow request, so.
Okay, do we have Commissioner Armstrong? I apologize.
Sorry, just to wrap up on discussion, I want to get on record where I struggle with the slippery slope argument or the precedent-setting argument is that we heard through this process that there's no prohibition on this in code. So it was pretty clearly answered to me that this could happen under a very set circumstance. It would come back and go through the same process, but there's nothing actually prohibiting this from occurring. So I don't necessarily agree with the precedent setting aspect of it, or that we're going down a slippery slope, because this could actually happen in other settings where we would have to go through this same deliberative process. So for that reason, I don't have an issue making the findings, and I will be supporting the project.
Commissioner Draculich?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm ready to make a motion.
Please do.
In the matter of LDC 23-00032, Jacobs Glow Plaza and Festival Area Amendment, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit amendment, subject to conditions listed in the staff report, and I can make all the findings.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Armstrong, I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay, and I cannot make conditional use permit finding number 1.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries 5-1. Thank you and good luck with your project. For those in the background who are interested in the appeal process, or those in the audience that are interested in the appeal process, any final action not including recommendation or failure to take action by the Planning Commission may be appealed to the Reno City Council by the applicant, the mayor, or a city council member or any person who is aggrieved by the action or inaction. An appeal together with the fees must be filed with the city clerk within 10 business days starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk. If the applicant has elected to use the former zoning code in effect prior to January 13th, 2021, as authorized per RMC 18.01.602, appeals must be filed within 10 calendar days starting on the day after written notice of the action is filed with the city clerk, and if the 10th calendar day falls on a weekend or holiday when the clerk's office is not open, the appeal may be filed on the next business day, and that appeals process can be found in the on the agenda that is posted on the city's website as well as where it has been publicly noticed. Okay, with that, we have on here agenda item number 6, which is a training. And I would request that we continue that training to the next meeting because we have 2 items.
Jason Garcia will be planning manager for the record. As part of my, excuse me, as part of the staff updates, I was going to update the commission that there are only 2 public hearing items on the February 15th meeting. We also are having a RTC presentation. So if you want to go ahead and have the annexation training, we can move it to then. I'm also prepared for tonight, of course. So
I think it makes sense to move it to the next meeting.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Jason.
Will do.
Agenda item number 7, the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report.
Commissioner Johnson, we had a meeting last week. There were 3 conformance review items on there. All of them passed with minimal discussion with the one exception in the city of Reno. We did have a couple of questions on that, but it ultimately passed. The next meeting will be, I guess, at the end of February.
Thank you. Agenda item number 8, staff announcements.
Jason Garcia Lebu, planning manager for the record again. Just to kind of repeat what I just said, on the February 15th meeting, staff has reached out to RTC and NDOT to bring an update to the commission on road projects in the North Valleys. So that'll be coming with that meeting. And then, as I mentioned, there are 2 items scheduled, and it might be of interest to know to the commissioners that we did receive a appeal on the Riviera tentative map project from January 18th. And that's all the updates staff has at this point. Thank you.
Agenda item number 9, commissioners' suggestions for future agenda items.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Drakic, I won't belabor the point too much going back to 5.2 and Commissioner Johnson's point. I guess seeing that major deviation, it was just frustrating knowing that makes a ton of sense, that step back ratio of 2 to 1, if those parcels are against each other and you've got a house that's single story, that makes all the world of sense. And all of a sudden we have a 50-foot buffer and that ratio still maintains from what I understand, where that buffer doesn't even really go to. So anyway, I don't know if the mechanism is to put it on the agenda, so I apologize. But just for the record, if staff wants to address it in any way, I think you kind of got all their comments from earlier. So like I said, I won't belabor the point, but just wanted to bring that up.
Great, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Please.
Commissioner suggestions. I kind of just want to repeat what was said at the last meeting where we stayed till 2 a.m. Just a request that we have, I don't know if this is agenda item, but basically just not have, maybe this is more appropriate for public comment. I'll save it. What do you? Just that we have limited, reasonable amount of items, especially if they're contested, because I just don't think it allows for fair and democratic process when people are required to be here till 2 a.m. to give public comment. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Public comment, we'll open it. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
None for this item.
Okay. Seeing anybody in Zoom? Okay. Seeing no one in the audience, we'll close public comment. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So, Commissioner Drakic, so moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Meeting is over.